Okay, so good morning or afternoon everybody, wherever you are on our fair globe. Today we have myself, I'm Patrick Grant, and we've got Martin Cox, the Senior Technical and Support Manager. He's going to be taking you through everything today. Okay, now today we're going to be covering a couple of things. Two to start with will be the resolutions and the quality slider. And then after that we're going to move on to Martin showing you an animation. It will actually be Martin who will take you through today's webinar and get you up to date and everything. So as long as everything is okay, I'll hand you over to Martin and he'll get you started.
Thanks, Patrick, and also I'd like to extend a welcome to everybody. It's always great to see so many names from all around the world. So you know, we certainly hope that you're finding these webinars useful, and as always, if you have any ideas for any webinar subjects, we do try and have a poll on our Facebook page every now and again, and but also feel free to let us know at either our support email address, which we talk about at the end, but you know, it really helps, and we do hope you enjoy them, and we look forward to the feedback. Okay, as Patrick mentioned, I'm going to have a look at the Shaderlight options, and we've had a few questions regarding what the resolutions mean, and particularly if you're going to print. You know, a lot of print houses, they ask for a particular resolution, so you know, this is something that we really do get asked about, and it'll hopefully help explain how the resolution works in the Shaderlight settings menu. So if I go into our Shaderlight Render Settings here, so the output resolution is at the top here, and we have the familiar resolutions that you may have seen before. And you know, looking at these, we've got the 1280 by 720, and you know, if you have a television, that's generally 720p, and also the 1920 by 1080, so you've got the 1080p. So you know, you've got those familiar resolutions there. Now the question we do get asked is, how do these tie in with dots per inch when you go to print? And the answer really is, ultimately, if you think of, is how many dots make up your picture. So 800 by 600, you've got 800 dots long and 600 dots high. So you know, that's how it's making up your image. And then ultimately, if you want to send this to print, and usually your printer will tell you what resolution they want, because it will very much vary on what type of print media that you're working to. If you're working on quite a small, high quality job, you know, that like a flyer, an A4 flyer, or a magazine cover, then you're looking at 300 dots per inch. If you're looking at larger print, or you know, less than that, it's 150 dots per inch, and this can get lower, particularly the larger you work to. But you know, 100 dots per inch, you're looking at large scale posters and things like that. So really, it's converting these numbers into dots per inch. Now, most rendering packages, they render out at 72 dots per inch. So if we say the 800 by 600, when you render this, even though it renders at 800 by 600, so it's then basically taking that as 72 dots per inch. So that then, you know, ultimately you divide your 800 by 72, and that will tell you how many inches this is going to print at that resolution. So if your printer did say to you that you need an image, and if we take some simple numbers and say, well, you want 10 inches by 10 inches at 150 dpi. Now that's nice and simple, because ultimately it's 10 inches times 150 dpi, so it's then 1500. So you know, our resolution would then be a custom resolution. We'd put this in as 1500 by 1500. Now the image that you get out at the end, as I mentioned, this is 72 dpi. Now if you mention this, you can tell this to your printer, or actually when they open it up in Adobe Photoshop, it would tell them that it's 72 dpi. and then they would simply convert the image to 150 dpi. And this is simply done in most of the packages, and it's just a technique that they use. But really, it's just worth knowing. It's some information, and we've had the question sort of a few times, and this is something that we are looking at of perhaps some different options. So sort of some different print options, A4 or things like that. So if anyone has any sort of particular requirements, again, always let us know. We like to listen to the customers to ultimately give you guys what they want. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to type them into the online questions there while we're going through, and we'll try and answer as many as we can as we go through. So okay, so that's really sort of on the output resolutions there. Now, another question that we do get is, what does the quality slider do? And now it may seem, it's a fair enough question, because you've got the low quality to the high quality.
Just quickly, Martin, if you don't mind, before we jump onto that, what's the highest resolution Shaderlight can do?
Okay, the highest resolution, and if we actually hover over this box there, it tells us it's 16,000 by 16,000 pixels. So ultimately, these pixels there are 16,000 by 16,000. You're talking a very high resolution, and this would be seriously large scale print. Even at 300 dots per inch, you're talking a pretty large print there. So you've got options there.
I think the way you put it to me once, Martin, was if you did 16,000 by 16,000, you could put it on the side of a billboard and be happy. Yeah,
and particularly with a billboard, if you get fairly close to a billboard, you'll actually look that you can make out those the DPI on that. So you can really sort of see that option there. So you really can see that coming in. Okay, so as we were saying, on the quality slider here, the option is the settings that we've got, and if I just open up a simple scene here, and I've just got this scene that I call just set up for the reflections. So if I render this at the moment, we bring up our Shaderlight render window there, and we can see there I've just got these two material balls, and they've set up with our mirror shiny material. Now if I actually zoom in to the reflections on this the left hand side material ball here, and if I zoom right in, we can see the reflection there, and this is the sort of outline of the first material ball. So this is a reflection and reflections in here. So the first thing that is altered by the render settings and the quality in here is what's called the ray depth. Now the ray depth, it sounds much more complicated than it actually is. But if I turn this up here, if I go to a higher quality, level 3 here, we saw a couple more reflections appear in our render here. And what the ray depth means is the amount of times the rays are actually bouncing. So the number of reflections, so sort of from one to the other, and then sort of backwards and forwards. So we can see we've increased that number there. And again, if I sort of go a little bit higher, we get a couple more appear in there as well. So that's one of the things that is controlled by the quality. So that just improves as you turn the quality slider up as well. So that's one of the options. Now the other thing that is controlled and is what's called the glossy samples. Now again, it's something that it sounds worse than it actually is, but if I go into our glossy material and I set it to glossy mirror, we can see here that we've got quite sort of a hammered finish, and these are basically these are glossy samples. So all of these dots are the reflections of the glossy material. Now, a glossy material, as you've probably seen if you've used the glossy material in the Shaderlight Render Settings, it gives you that blurred finish. And the further something is away, the more it actually blurs. So again, if I go through here and I increase this a little bit, we can see it starts smoothing out our glossy reflection. And again, the higher I get, the more this starts smoothing out. And now we're starting to get sort of a really soft blurred reflection. And if I turn this up so that we're actually rendering in tiled mode, so we've gone to that, you know, that sort of one off the highest level here, and this just takes, you know, a couple of minutes to render there, we can see we now get very soft blurred reflection. So, you know, that's something that this just comes in with these glossy samples. So it just improves those reflections there, and you just get that much nicer, softer image. So that's something that you know, the quality slider increases as well. Now, something else that it works on is what's called anti-aliasing. Now, you know, as you any people that have attended webinars in the past, you know, we really don't sort of like throwing sort of too many of the technical terms at you. But I think it's, you know, it is worth mentioning on what some of these settings actually do. So anti-aliasing, and we can see this in SketchUp here, we can actually see that the edge on the rectangle, it steps down, and you know, that's sort of quite noticeable there. So if I just render this this cube and render this at the lowest quality here, now if I just set this up to zoom into 100%, we can see there that again the render steps down, and you can actually see those edges there, and it's a noticeable step. Now by turning the quality up again, if we look at this, and again the step's less prominent. Now if I turn this up to sort of a much higher level, we then use techniques to actually remove that step, so it's starting to actually smooth out that edge. So again, anti-aliasing is, you know, is something that that we use as we increase the quality on there as well. So, you know, and again, we can go up to the highest options. It sets that to the highest level. So, you know, it just brings that in and gives you the best finish. Okay, so if I now open up an interior scene here. Now, again, with our the quality slider here, so this is just loading up. It's going to load my interior settings, because we've actually got the interior option turned on in my render settings. So we've now got the global illumination in the room. Now there's two things that we can look at as we make the changes here, and what the quality slider increases is the glossy samples. Sorry, not the glossy samples. It's the number of light photons. Now again, we're talking sort of on the science a little bit here, but what's happening is that ultimately we are rendering the light that comes into our room, and all of these dots, light photons basically, are bouncing around the room. So, you know, they're hitting that back wall, and we're getting the red color on the back of the sphere here in the room, and you know, these are bouncing around the room. And you can start to see these light photons, and on the edge of the shadows here as well. So increasing the quality increases the number of light photons in the scene. So we can now see that I've turned this level up a bit, and it's starting to smooth out the edges of the shadow, and generally the wall is appearing a lot smoother. So we're getting a lot less sort of differences in that wall color-wise, and it just smooths out the effect. So again, if I turn that up even further, and even sort of as this starts rendering in, we can start seeing that the edges of our sun here are appearing much more, are appearing much slower. So, that's again something else that increases there. So, that just sort of smooths out those edges. Okay, so, that's running through the things that are controlled in the quality slider. So you can really, start getting an understanding why, in Shaderlight, the quality slider does affect the timing a lot as well. Particularly as if you go up to level 10 and the highest level, this increases the number of light photons, it increases the samples, you get softer shadows. You can understand now everything else is working harder.
We get a lot of people who come to us and saying Shaderlight's a little slow, so we ask them, what are your settings for and how are you using it? So the quality level will be up high and the resolution would be up high, but they're looking to use the interactivity. The best way to use Shaderlight that we found is to, when you're doing your preliminary work, you're starting your concept, keep the settings low, keep the quality low, keep the resolution low, and you're going to get that interactivity going on. Then when you're happy with the final image, put those settings back up and you're going to get a much crisper, better image, and you're going to manage your workflow a lot better. That's a good piece of advice to go along with. So low to start and whack them up to finish.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to animations, and we're going to look at how to create an animation within SketchUp and Shaderlight. And then I'm going to show you how to actually create an animation using the free video editing software in Windows. And again, this is something that we get asked a lot of, that oh, how do I save an animation? Because our animation tool, we give you the tool that basically creates those sort of scenes and all of each frame. Now the reason for this is that Mac users, they like to work with particular movie files. Windows users use another movie file, and it's really trying to find that common ground. We would love to give you the option to say save as an AVI, an MOV, an MP4, but you can understand then when you install Shaderlight, it's going to say, right, you need to install QuickTime, you need to install Windows Movie Player. So we want to make sure, and we give everyone the flexibility. So that's one of those the reasons we sort of get asked that question. Okay, so I'm going to create a simple animation in SketchUp here. Now I'm actually going to use our Replace Me tool, and it's a good reminder if anyone hasn't seen this tool, or if they have seen it and don't remember how to use it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a component from this cube that I've just drawn in here, and I'm going to call this golf buggy. So we've now got my cube as a component here, and I'm going to go into my Shaderlight for SketchUp menu in the plugins, and I'm going to use the Replace Me creator. I'm going to say that I would like to replace that cube with a golf buggy. So if I just on my computer, and I'm going to go into our training here, and we've got this this golf buggy model, and I've now said that I would like that cube to be replaced with a golf buggy. Now I would also quite like to render this. I'm going to render this as a chalk render as well. Now for speed, I'm just going to turn the quality down a little bit, because we're going to be rendering an animation. So if I just export this here, we'll just see what we're going to get there. There we go. So we've got our golf buggy. Now this is a good model to show an example of the chalk render. Again, this is a question that does come up with the chalk render. What's happening is that our golf buggy here is obviously just looking pretty whited out at the moment, and this is due to the shadow range in the chalk render. Now the shadow range is the distance that the shadow appears from edges onto your model. So at the moment, this golf buggy I know is modelled in millimeters, and we've said that the shadow range is 1 millimeter. So we just get 1 millimeter of shadow. So if I give this 3 meters there, so 3,000, we can then see that we're spreading that shadow range out there from from our golf buggy. So we really get to see that there as well. And I'm just going to go into our shadow settings and just turn on our ground plane as well. So that just turns on our shadows. So we're just now getting those shadows on the floor as well from the golf buggy. And I may increase those a little bit so we get a little bit more definition on the floor there. So we've now got our golf buggy there. And remember, this is in Replace Me. SketchUp is still just loading the cube. We're still doing sort of all the hard work there. So I'm now going to add an animation. So if I just add a scene in SketchUp here, and we'll just have a simple rotation of our golf buggy there, and I'm going to add another scene there. So we've got our scene transition. There we go, and we can see that updating. So just a simple option there, just sort of rotating around there. Now I'm not going to make sort of too much difficult, and we'll see why in a second, because I want to work live on this one. And in my settings, and I'm just going to turn off the scene delay there. I don't want any scene delay. So my animation is simply just going to go from scene 1 to scene 2, and no delay there. So in my Shaderlight animation tool here, and I can go in here, and the first question it asks me is where I would like to save the scene to. So I'm just going to browse to that, and I'm going to put this in our my directory that I have set up on here. So in this folder, and I've got 2 folder options here. I've got 15 frames per second and 25 frames per second. Now these are just folders that I've created, so I can just rename this if I just call it Golf Buggy Anim, and I now choose what I would like my frames to be called. So if I just save that, and now using this, each frame is going to be just called that Golf Anim, as I call that, and I'm going to save each one out as a JPEG. Now it's also requirement here just at the frame rate of my animation. So how many frames per second would I like? Now we do give the option there, so that just a useful tip. If you set up multiple scenes and you would like only those scenes rendered, so not an animation, you could set your scene transitions to 0 and then say, right, I'd like 1 frame a second, and it would render each one of those scenes. So it's quite a clever way of actually queuing up renders. It's a good technique there. But with regards to other frame rates, 15 frames per second, you're going to get sort of a fairly decent render, and moving up 25 frames per second. So this would particularly work if you're working on sort of NTSC and sort of interlacing, and so you've got the majority of the familiar tools there. So I'm going to choose 25 frames per second. So it's telling me it wants to render 51 frames. So I'm now going to start this rendering, and what this is going to do is going to basically start Shaderlight rendering, and it's now going to render each frame. So now you can understand, I've turned the quality down a little bit for rendering. Now that's also a really useful tip as well, that don't turn up to quality 10 if you're rendering an animation. Alright, you'll soon see that sort of the quality levels that you can have. But by turning it up to quality 10, to be honest, you're getting so much detail in there, and you're not actually going to see that detail in an animation. So you can actually get away with a bit of a lower quality when you're rendering an animation, just purely because you really don't need that quality level in a moving image.
It's kind of like when we were looking at the anti-aliasing and the quality earlier. I mean, for us to notice the anti-aliasing, we had to have a look for it, whereas obviously in an animation you're kind of flying past it, as it were, so you haven't got that time to like Martin quite rightly says, the quality doesn't need to be quite so high.
Okay, so if I now just go to this folder where this is all rendering away quite happily, and if I just come into here, we can see, there we go, it's creating each frame, and just as those JPEGs. So you know, we're just getting that animation coming along here. Now, obviously, the more frames we let this finish, you know, we could sit here for a couple of minutes and talk amongst ourselves if we wanted to for a few frames. But you know, ultimately, the more frames that you let it finish, but we can certainly set this. So you know, we can set this as high as we want to.
Okay, just while that's rendering, Martin, we had a question come over. How can I set the dimension of the window in SketchUp to have the same view in the render? Sometimes Shaderlight doesn't respect the dimension of the window.
Shaderlight links itself to the height of your SketchUp window. Now, we'll just let a few more frames render here, and you know, and I can certainly show you exactly how we're linking. Now, the reason for this is that we wanted to link to something. We did look at the option, and I will be honest, this is still something we are thinking about, whether we have a button that just says render SketchUp window. But the reason we don't do that at the moment is because of the resolution is actually of, you know, your SketchUp window, depending on the resolution you're working to on your screen, can actually be quite low. So just if we say match the SketchUp window, you know, particularly in my render, in this window at the moment, you know, we're working on, this is only sort of about 700 by 500. So, you know, that would, yes, it would give you a render suitable for a website, but it wouldn't give you much for print. So I'm going to finish this off now, just we'll leave it there. So if I now just render a single frame, and we'll get back to that animation, I'd like to answer this question that was asked there. So we've matched this height of this particular image here. Now, if I just move my SketchUp window, and you can see the way that SketchUp scales, we've not re-rendered anything. We're still matching the height. Nothing's changed. Because the way that SketchUp is scaling, we're still matching that height. So we're now rendering that particular area there, just matching those edges. Now, the good thing about this is that, you know, if you want to perhaps combine two images, which is generally the request that we have, if I save my, if I export my SketchUp model as a 2D graphic, so if I export it as a JPEG, and the height is 71 pixels, now I know this height is 640, and actually no, it's 480, it's the width of 640. I know this height is 480, so if you edit that in Photoshop and say change the height to 480, it would match identical with your Shaderlight render window there. So it would be exactly the same. And again, it's the same if we come all the way here, we're still matching the height. So unless I zoom out here, so we're still matching that height, but now we're rendering a little more that you can actually see in the SketchUp window. So, you know, that's how we are matching that. So, you know, we're trying to make it the behavior sort of follow SketchUp as such with the height. So, you know, we do give you that dimension to match there, but I know it's something that can be a little bit complicated to understand. But once you realise that matching the resolution height-wise in Shaderlight, you can easily get your numbers, particularly in like Photoshop or something like that, in SketchUp. So, you know, it does make things a little bit easier there. Okay, so now if we go back to our animation, so you know, I've got sort of 44 frames here, and we can see that you know, we've got that movement, a little bit of going around our buggy. So as I mentioned, I'm going to use the Windows video editor, and if I just find my Windows Live Movie Maker there, So this is the free software that comes with Windows. And most video editing software has this ability to insert pictures into your video and then set them up as a movie. Now QuickTime Pro is a really good example of this, and if you have QuickTime Pro, which is about £20, you can, when you go to File, you can actually say open a sequence of images and it will convert it into a movie for you. But you know, and most paid software does that, and iMovie as well on the Mac, which is free as well. You know, that does come with it. So if I say I want to add photos to my movie, and if I just choose my sort of first scene here, now that's just to make sure I select, there we go. So we've got my 44 scenes here, and I bring those into my Movie Maker. So at the moment, each frame has been set up to be 7 seconds long. Because we've imported them as images, it thinks we want to view them, and 7 seconds is a good time. So at the moment, our animation here is 5 minutes and 8 seconds. Now that's going to be quite a dull animation because we're just going to see each frame for 7 seconds. So I want to select all of these, and we've got the tool up here, select all, or I can do Control and A, or right click and select all. And now if I go into my video tools, I can now choose the duration for each frame. So instead of 7 seconds, I want to work out that I've got 25 frames per second, and I need to work out what the duration of each frame is there. Now it's not too bad, because if you just do 1 divided by 25, you then get ultimately your number, and that is 0.04 seconds. And 15, just for reference, 15 frames per second is 0.07. 25, as I said, is 0.04, and 30 is 0.03. Now, these are sort of the rounded numbers, particularly for sort of 30 frames. So this then gives us the duration there, and we've got 1.76 seconds, because I didn't quite let this finish. But we can now see, there we go, we've got that animation. And now this was set to a very low quality. So as I mentioned, when things are moving, you really don't see some of those things like the anti-aliasing. So it's one of those things that you've really got that control there. And it's then nice and simple that we can actually then say, well, I'd like to save the movie. Now, I've set up a couple of different options here. I've got one called 720p, and that's one that I've set up. I've created a custom setting in here. So, when I create my videos, I've got sort of the 1280 by 720. So it's quite simple to set that up, and I can choose, my frame rate, and that will convert that to the correct animation. So it's fairly simple to save that out. Again, something like QuickTime, you literally say File, Export, and you can then change that, and you will then get your full animation saved out. And this is using, as we saw, the free tool that we've got here. So that's really sort of the way of creating the animation there. And ultimately, whether you do this in one go on one computer, you have smaller ones. So you've got those options there, and it just makes life a little bit easier on there. So again, I can we can preview this full screen, and it just gives that animation. Now, using the GoToWebinar software, it may look like it's playing back jerky, but you may see it in the smaller screen a little bit easier. What's happening is it is playing back smoothly. It's a smooth animation, but because you're watching an online webinar, there is sometimes a little bit of a delay in frame, so it may look jerky. But if you have a look on some of our videos on our website or YouTube, you'll see there that you know, you can create really sort of smooth 30 frames per second animations. So you know, you have got that option there.
We've seen some really great, really great animations so far, and very large ones as well, which is quite impressive. So if you do have anything, please just send them over to us. We'd love to see what you guys get up to, or to post them on our Facebook page or something similar. No, it's really good, Martin. It's really very helpful, and it's good to see you can do it so quickly and online at the same time. It's quite an impressive achievement.
Okay, so what we've got here, I've seen now somebody has put in and with a future release request, and you know, again, please, you know, bring them in. That's absolutely fantastic. You know, we are continuously developing Shaderlight, and we really do want to, you know, give you the product that you're after. So you know, there's that one on there. Okay, now somebody's also asked, will this information be available as a step-by-step tutorial? Now, I don't know if this is this video, you know, creating a video in this way. This webinar, we are recording it, and it will be available on YouTube, and you know, we can certainly let people know when that's on there. Step-by-step tutorial, we can have a look at that, and you know, we're creating tutorials all the time, so you know, there are different ways, but you know, this video will be up there, and that will talk through that one as well. So if there is anything that I've gone through a little bit too fast, or you know, the question comes up again, you know, yeah, feel free to have a look through the video, or as you know, you can contact us at our support email address. Okay, now we've got our system requirements there, and you know, we sort of we keep things on there, but our support email address, we've got support@artvps.com, and you know, the guys here, you know, we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can, and you know, it's free support that we're offering on the software. So you know, if you have got any questions, please ask away.
Excellent, Martin. Thank you so much for that. It's really enlightened, well, me and everybody else, I think, as well. So it's absolutely superb. Just a couple of other bits of information for you all. If you're aware, you may not be, we're an official Google ATC authorized training center, and we can also offer training on Shaderlight as well, of course. We're actually now taking bookings for June, so if you are interested, please contact training@artvps.com, or info1 at artvps.com, and like I say, we're taking bookings for June.